we could have had some
We
fun.
can still rant about Alicia Silverstone in a positive way. Hi, YouTube.
We could have a really good time with all of these 90s.
I have nothing
references
bad to say about
and the
Alicia
Melissa
Silverstone.
Joan Hart and
I
a
love
conversation that has Melissa Joan Hart, Alicia Silverstone, and Dolly Parton and Jacqueline Smith all in the same conversation. That's very interesting.
We've just run the gamut of decades there.
Yes, we have.
Hello, YouTube.
Greetings, salutations.
Some pig.
It's become our standard. We're gonna have to get a podcast T-shirt that says
Greetings,
some
salutations.
pig on it.
Oh yeah, that's funny. Hello, everyone.
Hello. I'm gonna change my grip on my mug before Stacy mocks me again.
How was it before?
I don't know. You were like, you have the claw.
As Candace Owens says, a little fake and gay.
Wow.
Sorry. What a way to start the podcast.
So all the people that we have mentioned on the podcast, it's been a minute since I thought we would mention Candace Owens.
I try not to, let's be honest.
I used to be such a fan.
Same. Anyway, and I love a good conspiracy theory, but some of these are just put on your tinfoil hat and
I have a hard time figuring out how anybody buys into conspiracy theories that would say, I know things that
nobody else knows.
His widow, his closest friends, his family, the FBI, that none of these people know these things, or they all know it and they're all covering it up because the people who loved him best didn't love him like I did.
Right.
That's crazy.
That's a little, yeah.
I mean, that's just crazy.
You
stuff.
sound
There
crazy.
are so many people that were so invested in Charlie Kirk for so many reasons, including those that hated him. But there's a connection and investment. Do we really? It's kind of like
welcome to something to rant about.
Yeah, we gotta have a little bit of something to rant about hangover here. It's kind of bleeding over.
We haven't had it in a while.
So it's kind of like the stuff with Trump and the Epstein files and all that. Like, so you really think that while the Democrats were while the Biden administration was in charge of the Epstein files and they were looking for every single way they could come after Trump, you really think there's going to be some smoking gun now that comes out?
Right.
I'm not the smartest guy, but come on, give me a break.
Yeah.
There are just so many. That's my problem with most conspiracy theories is they actually rely on people being smart.
You know what my favorite
skilled.
You know what my favorite conspiracy
most
theory
of the
is?
people involved in these things just aren't that much.
Do you have one though that you're kind of like
Juan Valdez?
Do you have one?
Do you have one?
That's my Mexican heritage coming out. ¿Por qué?
Email Stacy at
no, you can't. It's not racist. I'm Mexican. That Long John Silver's is like a secret drug
Stacey
trafficking
just said
ring.
Mexicans cannot be racist.
Let's not go there. That Long John Silver's is a secret drug trafficking ring.
And that's why people go there when nobody wants to go there.
Yeah, because like, who do you know? They're like, oh, I love Long John Silver's and I want to go to Long John's. I don't think I've ever been actually.
I used to love it, but because they're everything is like fried. Everything is battered and fried.
Even the napkins.
It felt like it. Every time I'd eat at Long John Silver's, I felt like I needed a shower.
Yeah.
I was like, I need to use the little wet naps all over my face and everywhere else.
The drugs. Anyway.
It's probably it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is our last podcast before Thanksgiving.
This is why the internet.
It might be our last podcast ever.
Yeah. We need, before we get into Advent season, we need to discuss if we're going to continue our regular.
Let's do that off the air.
Take a little hiatus.
We usually do after Christmas, I think.
Yeah.
For a week or two. But anyway.
I don't know.
We'll talk about that later.
Was I here? Have I been here? Am I here today?
What?
So
what year is it? Everything is something.
Welcome to our existential crisis.
Existential dread. Yeah. So this is our last podcast before Thanksgiving. So I will say before we go, we haven't even started. Happy Thanksgiving.
It's an existential crisis when you get to the bottom of the coffee mug.
That's true. So. Starbucks peppermint mocha coffee creamer that you can buy in the store is disgusting.
Well, that's how I feel about Starbucks in general.
The viscosity of it is like snot.
Did you come here for mucus-based viscosity conversation?
Who didn't? If you didn't, you're in the wrong spot.
I'm here for it.
Anyway, we are about to transition to our Advent series in a couple weeks
Coming up. Yep.
I love it.
Yeah.
Because that also means
this will be the last. This coming Sunday will be the last. Non-Advent
Oh, really?
sermon,
Is the community Advent service a week after the Advent actually starts?
Yes, it's the second week this year.
Gotcha.
Because we have Fifth Sunday,
right
on the 30th.
Cool. So yeah, we're getting into that time of year, which means Christmas music, which has been nonstop since November 1st for me.
I think it's been that way around our house, pretty much the same. Yeah.
So
you and Emma share the same brain sometimes when it comes to that
sort
of thing.
Anywho, so yeah, but we're still for now. We're
Christmas tree is up. They're still decorating it, but the Christmas tree is up, which we have not normally done. But we were storing it in the upstairs, which has been technically an attic, and it's being converted to what it was originally supposed to be in the first place, which is going to be Emma's bedroom. And so while we're doing construction up there, rather than trying to move it,
you're just like put it up here.
Let's just put it up and we'll get it.
This is the first year I bought a new Christmas tree this year, and it's the first year that my cat has not jumped in it yet.
Really?
So I'm really, really excited.
We're a little concerned. We got our calico likes to chew on the branches. I'm very displeased with that.
I have a fake.
And then she'll vomit up the things that
I have fake cranberry decoration somewhere, and my one cat likes to chew on those.
I'm quite sure Caro, the barn cat that was rescued, 4 animals in the house, 3 of them are Emma's rescues. Anyway, so this is the bottle baby that she nursed to life. She likes to knock things off of every surface. It's just
typical cat behavior.
She doesn't even play with them. She just likes to watch them
absolutely
fall.
Not.
She likes to watch them fall, and she likes to let the dog chew them up. So
they're working together.
Seriously, she'll get up on the counter or on the table or whatever else, just push stuff up, and she'll just keep going. She'll work it all the way across the table because I have to see this fall. And she'll push it, then she'll just lay there and watch the dog chew on it. Drives me insane.
Yeah, gruesome twosome. Anyway.
Yeah, and she's gotten bigger, so she took the lid from the cookie jar, the big glass lid, and pushed that off. It landed on carpet, so it didn't break. But it's like, I was pretty thick. It might not have broken anyway. But I'm like, she's stepping her game up here. So I'm concerned about what's going to happen with the Christmas tree.
Right.
So we have a 12-foot Christmas tree.
That's big.
You've been in the garden room there.
No, I haven't. I've never been in your new house.
I thought you.
I've been outside.
Well, I guess we just talked about it, but I thought you and your mom came for dinner. But
I've never been inside.
So anyway, we'll have to rectify that.
Okay.
But as we, I'm just thinking about when you were there outside.
Emma's graduation party.
Oh, and you didn't go. Oh, okay, yeah, because we were on the. Anyway, so there's the big windows up at the top. So Caro, the knocker over thing, she will get up on the table, jump onto the china cabinet, and then jump up into these windows that are up at 12 feet up in the air. So we normally we've had one Christmas in the house, but we put Christmas decorations up in the window. I don't think we can do that now that she has figured out that she goes up there and she knocks things off. So now Santa comes down, breaks his neck, and we're in trouble.
You got a lawsuit on your hands,
right?
In the North Pole,
or will she get up in there and then jump to the tree,
right
up there?
She's the star on top of the tree.
She didn't really mess with ornaments last year, which kind of shocked us. But the puppy has never seen a Christmas tree. She's never seen ornaments.
About to have a wild Christmas.
Her thing. She's a destroyer.
Well,
you still haven't seen the Superman movie, right?
No, I haven't.
It's too bad for a DC girl, but
I know.
I liked it. It was good. Some people loved it, some people hated it. Emma did not care for it. But Crypto, the dog, the super dog in there, is so much like Annie, our rotten little puppy, who is sweet and adorable, but just destroys everything. If she could fly and was white instead of black, she's like black, gray, brown combo. But yeah, there's a line in there where he's Superman is losing his mind because they have the dog. The bad guys have the dog. And he's like, where's the dog? He's got to go rescue the dog. Anyway, so he's talking to Lois, and I think it was Lois. And she's like, really? You're going after the dog? And he's like, it's not even a very good dog.
But it's still, yeah.
But he's alone.
Yeah.
I'm probably scared.
I need to see that. I love Rachel Brosnahan, and it's very easy to look at David Corenswet. So
I think he does. It's a very, very different Superman movie. The whole vibe is different. So don't go expecting anything remotely Christopher Reeves or Henry Cavill or Brandon Routh. it's a very distinctly he carries the Clark Kent personality into the Superman character, and
I know he said he modeled a lot of it after Christopher Reeve, but
yeah, you could see
some of the mannerisms anyway.
Like the difference between Clark Kent and Superman in the Christopher Reeves movie, that's not there. It has kind of some of that camp to it. So it's much campier. I think that's an appropriate description than the Henry Cavill. The DCEU went so dark. They wanted everything to feel like Batman Begins for a while. So we're going to be epic and gritty and all that kind of stuff. And this is much brighter. It's the
you
old,
can tell. I mean,
it's
just
the
from
old bright blue, with
the
costume,
boxer shorts on the.
There's a classic look to it in a lot of ways. I think it kind of has the Kingdom Come logo on it, but it's. Anyway, I liked it. I thought it was good. I think there's potential for other things. I was afraid with James Gunn doing it that it was going to be very Guardians of the Galaxy, crazy humor, which was awesome in a lot of ways. But I think it's a good tribute to comic book Superman in a lot of ways. Only he gets beat up more in this than what
you can tell that just from the previews.
Right, exactly. I'm like, what is happening with this? Anyway, and there's explanations for it later, but it's just
6 degrees of Gilmore Girls. James Gunn is the brother of the guy that plays Kirk in Gilmore Girls.
He is not.
He is too.
You're a liar.
Well, no. And also Rachel Brosnahan.
When you mentioned Gilmore Girls, I needed to have a sip
coffee.
Of coffee. Yeah.
And also Rachel Brosnahan was in Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, directed by Amy Sherman Palladino, who also directed Gilmore Girls.
Look at that.
But Marvelous Mrs. Maisel
Bacon's in there somewhere.
Is not Gilmore Girls.
Yeah.
They're very different shows. Anyway, what are we talking about?
Compromise.
Oh, my least favorite thing. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So
I'm totally fine with everything as long as it's exactly the way that I want.
James Gunn did not compromise his vision.
There you go.
He knew what he wanted to do.
Good job
for it. So as we are looking at Deuteronomy, we're in Deuteronomy 7, and the focus in the first 6 verses is that wholehearted living for God makes no compromise with the world. And so when we see this picture, Moses has given them the instruction. He's called them to love the Lord with their whole being, pass this on to your children. That it's a re-emphasizing and kind of turning the prism a little bit as he goes through each of these different phases of these sermons. That whether it's 1 or 3, there's a debate, but it's essentially like 3 sermons that make up Deuteronomy. But as he's speaking and instructing the nation before they go in to the promised land, he goes back to this "don't forget the Lord" idea, but with a little bit different twist. 7, starting with verse 1, says, "When the Lord your God brings you into the land you are entering to possess, and drives out before you many nations," and he lists them, 7 nations larger and stronger than you. "And when the Lord your God has delivered them over to you, and you have defeated them, then you must destroy them totally. Make no treaty with them. Show them no mercy. Do not intermarry with them. Do not give your daughters to their sons, or take their daughters for your sons. For they will turn your children away from following me to serve other gods. And the Lord's anger will burn against you and will quickly destroy you. This is what you are to do to them: break down their altars, smash the sacred stones, cut down their Asherah poles, and burn their idols in the fire. For you are a people holy to the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you out of all the peoples on the face of the earth to be his people, his treasured possession." And he'll talk about that choosing in the next section that we'll look at next week.
So very specific.
Very specific. And, there are passages like this throughout the Torah, throughout the Old Testament, talking about this not intermarrying, utterly destroying, devoting to destruction these people. And so these are often passages that people who wanted to twist the scripture to fit what they wanted to do would use as kind of proof texts. People who were against interracial marriages and stuff throughout really the 20th century is where you saw a lot of it, but not only the 19th and 20th. the idea of mixed race stuff, people would come to verses like this and say, well, see, this is what the Bible says.
Mm-hmm.
You're not to intermarry outside of your ethnicity, outside of your race, and so on. That has absolutely zero to do with anything that we see in the scripture. And you can, if you read this whole passage, now we're only reading the first 6 verses here, but even if you just read the whole passage of this pericope of these first 6 verses, it's very evident. It's exceedingly clear this has nothing to do with ethnicity. That wasn't a part of the context that they were dealing with. It was never about the color of your skin or the places you were from. It was entirely about the God you serve, or the gods you serve in their cases. And so the emphasis here is don't intermarry with them, because they are condemned by God. These are nations that have rejected God, and God has rejected them. That's the standard. That's the norm for anybody that's not specifically called out from the world, which is Israel. They are rejected. And so Israel is called to carry out the sentence on them. So we can't use this to justify our own form of jihad where, we're going to go and kill the infidel and all that kind of stuff. This is a specific command for a specific time and a specific place. That has specifically to do with the history of Israel and what God is doing. But the principles don't change. We just have to determine what are the principles that are beyond this time-bound context. So as they're going in, God's not delivering us into Canaan to displace godless nations and establish his covenant people as a nation in this place. So we can't then say, oh, well, obviously this is, we're going to literally bring this over in this wooden way. But there are things that pertain to God's people as a broader idea then that are transferable, timeless principles for us today. And what we see in this is, when you get in here, don't let your version of mercy cause you to let them go. I feel bad for them, I'm going to let them go. Don't let your version of prudence cause you to make treaties with them. Well, maybe it'll serve us well if we utilize them. We'll let them be a part of our economy. We'll do trade with them. That's not what I'm calling you to do. I'm calling you to execute the sentence that I have passed against them. You go in, you drive them out, you do this, you put them to the ban. And all of these things of theirs, don't bring them in. Don't intermarry with them. And it specifically points out, don't intermarry with them because they'll turn your hearts from God. So if you're going to put this in a modern context, I think still wrongly, but closer to it, it's like a prohibition of the multiculturalism that we are so proud of. We love being a pluralistic society. We want to embrace everyone's culture. Well, that's a lot closer to what we're talking about here than the idea of some sort of ethnic purity. We need to keep the bloodlines pure. Has nothing to do with that. But it is about keeping the culture pure. For them, it's a culture that is centered on, dedicated to wholehearted living for God. That's actually what all of us in the human race were created for. And so the reason that judgment comes, the wrath of God comes on this fallen world, is because we refuse to do. We were talking in something ran about earlier about stuff that's not really hard to understand. It's that we don't want to do it, right? And that's the problem that we have. Is we know God, we know that there's a God. Every pagan out there knows that there's a God, but we refuse to acknowledge him as God and to give thanks to him. This is Romans 1. And so God's wrath comes on us. That's the issue with these Canaanite nations. And so as they're there representing the nations of the world in this place that God is giving to Israel, he says, no mercy, no deal making, no compromise. You go in, eliminate them, eliminate their means of worship, don't take in their practices. Israel will do the opposite of all of this over time. So as they'll go in for a generation, they'll continue to obey God and drive people out. And then by the time you get to the book of Judges, you're talking about multiple generations of compromise. Yeah. And every single time they give in a little, they give in a lot. That's what ends up happening with us today as well, is when we compromise a little bit, we'll have a little bit of the world here and a little bit of the world there. And, we'll do this thing that is contrary to God's word, but it makes sense to us, right? It feels right. It seems right. It's, there's some movement on TikTok we're going to jump on, and it makes all the sense in the world, except for it leads us away from God's heart and toward following ourselves and the world and the devil.
And I think that's what makes it so easy for people to twist what the Bible is actually saying, because, like you said, even with this verse, some people will take it as, oh, you shouldn't, have an interracial relationship or things like that.
Right.
And it's so easy when we start chipping away at little things like that to miss the entire point.
Exactly.
And yeah.
And like every other thing that we see here, it starts with a look at God's character. So verse 1 there is about the fact that God is faithful to his promises. When he does these things, when he brings you in, there's no if about it, but when he does what he said he would do, because he always does what he said he would do, then here's how you're to act.
But that can be uncomfortable too. Like this is an uncomfortable section to read, because we don't want to think of God.
We found very many that are comfortable,
but we don't want to think of God like, ooh, no mercy, ooh, kill them all, ooh, that's not pleasant.
No, that's right.
So, and I think in our
which is exactly the point, I think.
Right, and I think in our human minds we're like, ooh, that can't be what God really meant. That's he wouldn't, But there's lots of areas in the Bible like that where he wipes people out and no mercy, man.
And lots where he doesn't. So there's when God has that done, it's a specific purpose,
right?
And we need to not miss that. It's not that God is just willy-nilly eliminating.
I don't like you, you're gone, right?
Which he perfectly has the right to do.
Right.
He created us. My life
into this world, actually, take out.
That's literally the case, right? So I actually belong to him, whether I acknowledge him or not. He is the Lord. He is the master. He is the King of all kings, whether I acknowledge him or not. I owe him my existence, because apart from him, I don't exist, right? So if God has me killed here, it's the life that he gave. He's just taking it back. It's I'm borrowing, I'm stealing his breath to be able to.
But we don't like to think about it that way,
and we don't. and so when we think about
want our own autonomy and all that,
that's one of the big words, right? Autonomy is one of the key idols of our day, and so we talk about free will and so on, and autonomy kind of in the same. It's two different names for the same idol, really. It's self, and that's exactly the opposite of what God commands and tolerates.
Right.
There's no picture of a tolerant God
here.
And when we see it, people like to separate this out and say, well, God's so tolerant. He's so loving. He's such a gentleman, all that. Nope. You're redefining him.
Right.
I think that's part of the problem with a text like this, and you nailed it. It's uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
We want a God that fits in our box. We want him to be who we decide. We want God created in our image, not to conform to his. And so when God says, do this, and we're like, ooh, ick,
yikes,
then, we are judging God.
I think
we don't want to do that.
That's why it's easier for people to kind of ignore the Old Testament, because Jesus comes and he's human and he's easier to put in that box.
In a sense, but again, we have to leave out the parts where he talks about judgment.
Right.
And he does.
Right.
Jesus talks about God's wrath. Jesus,
you don't hear about that as often as,
We'll once in a while bring up when he's overturning tables in the temple, but mostly even then we'll talk about it as some sort of a social justice thing.
Right.
He's for the revolution. He's for the uprising. And, look at it's the money changers. It's the wealthy people. Bro, read the book.
Right.
Just read more than your proof text that you're trying to,
That's not a proof text at all.
This is my gotcha. I'm going to throw this out there. Just read the whole thing. Pay attention to what's going on. But Jesus affirms the law over and over again. Jesus says your righteousness has to exceed the righteousness of the Pharisees, who were the most legally righteous people that they knew. They kept the law and then made up laws so they could keep those laws.
Right.
They had all of that kind of stuff. Were there hypocrites? Yes, but that wasn't how people saw. That wasn't the norm. They were legalists, which is not the same thing as hypocrites. They became hypocrites in rejecting the Son.
Right.
Well, you could say they were, because they were rejecting God's plan, but they became consciously active in that at that point. So as we read the New Testament, Jesus is saying the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
but we're not Israel. So we're not called to come into the world and judge the world, just as Christ didn't come into the world and judge the world. That will happen. He makes that abundantly clear. That day is coming. So right now, our job is to evangelize the world, to make disciples, to be salt and light. But the time will come when the judgment will fall, when it won't be the God of mercy, it will be the God of justice. It's the same God. He hasn't changed, but he is delaying, he's postponing his judgment so that many can be saved. That's the goal.
Well, it's funny because it's not funny, but it's funny because it's not funny.
Many things like that.
When Jesus did preach those things, that's when he was met with the pushback. And that's the kind of stuff that we don't like today as well. So that hasn't,
when he preached what things?
The law. When he, because we always like to say, Jesus, this, especially now this time of year, you think of the baby Jesus and he's just a sweet little blah, blah, blah. And then you think of Jesus and the children and Jesus doing all these wonderful miracles. And
it's funny that you say that, because in the New Testament, it's actually like when we look at how we respond, right? We don't like the law. And we see that pushback from moderns and postmoderns and stuff more often. But in the Gospels, he mostly receives pushback from the Pharisees and people like that.
Right, that's what I'm
when
saying.
He's preaching the grace, not preaching the law.
Oh, well.
When he's saying, you unrighteous people can receive the grace of God and receive this righteousness. You who think you're righteous, you're actually unrighteous people. And so drawing their attention to the law for them, that while you think you're keeping the law, you're really not. So I guess in that sense, like you said, it's as he's preaching the law to those who think they're keeping the law that he gets that pushback.
But that is kind of I feel like the same thing we're doing today, because we'll take out pieces of the Bible. Even I've seen quote unquote preachers do this. They'll take out pieces of the Bible that are uncomfortable, or
I like your verbal quotes,
or they'll twist them a certain way, or they'll say, that doesn't really mean what you think it means.
Yeah.
And because it's I don't know, I need a better word than uncomfortable, but that's what it is, and we don't want to hear it. And
no, that's right. Yeah, because we have so compromised with the world that anything that doesn't compromise with the world feels harsh. It feels like, oh my gosh, what a terrible God this is.
And I realize that this passage that we've read today is specifically for Israel. I get that, but like you said, the principles remain for us.
Yeah,
and that's uncomfortable.
Well, and that's why Isaiah says, Isaiah 55, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are my ways your ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts. So the idea in this command here is, when you get in here, don't let your thoughts cloud the issue.
Right.
I'm telling you what to do. You don't have to get it.
Right.
You have to do it. If you get it, bonus. You can get it later.
Right.
We'll talk about those things. But what I'm telling you right now is, you do what I tell you to do, because I am God. And, one of my favorite verses in Scripture, or passages in Scripture, as you know, and probably anybody that's been with us very long knows, is Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him or submit to him, and he will make your path straight. That's exactly what we're talking about here. When you go into this land, trust me. Do what I'm telling you, not what you think is right, not what you feel. Don't work according to your own heart, what's right in your mind, according to your conscience. Trust me. Trust my word.
I wrote something about that in my Advent devotional, where you got to wrap things up here, I know, but kind of transition into that section here. We're going to the Christmas season. We're talking about waiting this Advent season, and waiting is this reminds me of waiting, because you're like, I want to do what makes more sense to me, and you're telling me what to do, and I have to trust that, and that's hard. There was a book I read to George when he was a baby. It's called Waiting is Not Easy. And that applies to me as a 37-year-old.
That sounds like an Advent devotion right there.
All right, I should have written about that. But yeah, it's whether you're waiting for hope or something to change in your life or a specific moment or specific person. We got all these things that we think we're waiting for when God is saying, I'm doing this. So yeah, you're going to wait for it, but I also need you to just kind of be still in your waiting. Do the actions that you're supposed to do,
Right.
Don't just sit on your hands, but don't mess up my plans,
man. We're
man.
not good at that.
No, I'm horrible at that. Waiting is not easy.
Even for things like waiting for our sanctification,
right.
Like God has set us apart, made us holy, and in that sense, right, that we usually call justification, there's a sanctification in that. But the progressive nature of being made like Christ, that we're not good in the waiting for that.
And trusting that God will do what He says He's going to do.
If He says that I'm saved by grace through faith, when I don't feel saved,
right,
I have to still trust that He is faithful to it. That's why it starts, in verse 1 with the fact that God's faithful to His promise. And we see this in everything. With the 10 Commandments, it's rooted in God's character. He keeps going back to these same phrases that He uses earlier to remind us this isn't really about you. We'll see that really specifically next week, and then again in chapter 9. This isn't about you. This is about God. It was always about God. It's always been about God. It will always be about God. Your job is to respond to Him rightly by living wholeheartedly for Him. And anything else is unacceptable. And so in this passage, just to kind of wrap it up, there are 4 areas that we see the principle that we should not compromise. The first is justice. So talking about going in, wiping them out. But look at how we have redefined justice today. We call it social justice and so on. And we have, I hesitate to say it, but we have this woke mentality that comes up even in the church. People talk about Big Eva and all these other things. It's so, we need to stop playing tribal games with grouping people together. But it's so prevalent.
Big Eva.
Big evangelical.
Oh, I've never heard that one. I haven't heard that one.
We run in different circles. That's a phrase that you hear a lot with talking about the prominent thought leaders in the evangelical world. So anyway, but we've seen a number of folks who were prominent in what have been, and maybe to some extent still are, sound Bible groups, sound Bible teaching, but they compromise with the world in terms of justice. And so now you start saying, well, we need to be more nuanced in our thinking about LGBTQ stuff or abortion or whatever else, race issues and so on. We need to be more nuanced about these things. And what we're doing is compromising with the world. We're fitting in with the world rather than saying, no, wait, stop. We're not playing these games anymore. So we see that with justice. We see that with relationships when he talks about not intermarrying. And you and I were talking about this before the podcast began, that there are so many people, so many so-called Christian women, some who actually are and some who are not, but claim the name, who just, I want nothing but a godly man. I just want a man of God. And they never pick a man of God. What they want is what they want. They want their thing, and they want to label it for God. So there's these compromises in how we do relationships. Even the process of dating that we have, we treat dating like it's some kind of a game, like it's an end in itself. Like these relationships are not intended to end in marriage, sexuality, and family, or that will separate the marriage from the sexuality and from the family. And all of these different things, we compromise in the church with the world. I can't even tell you that the first time I encountered a pastor who was and I use the scare quotes there. The first time I encountered a so-called pastor who was leading a so-called church and was actually encouraging people, first tolerating, later encouraging people to live together outside of marriage so that they could know if it was right. I'm like, well, what is wrong with you people? Have you lost your minds? We don't care what God says. We just want to do what the world says, what seems normal, what makes sense to us. And even from a worldly perspective, these things just don't work. The statistics are so skewed. When we say, well, this is how you get ready for marriage. How will you know if you're ready or not? And yet the breakup rate is far higher, and the divorce rate among couples that live together before they're married is higher than those who don't. So stop with all of it, all of the mainstream reasoning that creeps into the people of God. So we see it in justice, we see it in relationships. We also see the call to not compromise in worship. Here's what you're to do: smash their stuff, right? Take all of their instruments of worship, smash it, trash it, burn it. This is, tear it all down. None of it. Don't allow any of it.
Right.
And yet we see today in evangelical, well, you see it in high church settings as well, where you add the trappings of the world that seem churchy, right? So you've got all of the things that come in, some from Jewish history, some from pagan traditions, all blended together. And, there's a lot of different stuff, but it's human tradition that we've elevated. But in evangelical circles, we see the same kind of a thing. It's just more of a low church thing. So now it's casual. But what we're doing is we are worshiping according to the flesh. Right. We want songs that feel like something we like on the radio. That has nothing to do with worship. And I'm not even saying you can't do that. I'm just saying we're basing our forms of worship on what we want rather than on what the Bible calls us to. And we need to be much more careful about not compromising with the world in terms of our worship and how we approach God and how we think of God. We've talked down here so many times, and even just earlier in the cast, you were talking about this. We shape God to fit what is comfortable. We want him to do what we want him to do. We want him to be who we are comfortable with rather than who he is. And we take him on our terms rather than on his. And he does not tolerate that. And we can't compromise. And then lastly, and I think the last part really is where it all comes together, is we can't compromise in holiness. When we compromise in our holiness, then we become friends with the world. The nature of holiness is to be set apart. And God emphasizes this throughout the Old Testament, reiterates it throughout the New Testament. Be holy because I am holy. I've called you out. That's the nature. The word that we translate church, ecclesia, means the called out ones, that you're separated from the world unto God. And in James 4:4, we hear James talking to the church, and it's always assumed that there are tares among the wheat, there are unbelievers among the believers, and there are believers who are compromising and doing wrong things. But he calls in James 4:4, he says, you adulterous people, don't you know that friendship with the world means enmity against God? Therefore, anyone who chooses to be a friend of the world becomes an enemy of God. This is the nature of being called out, of being holy. We have to make sure that we recognize this world that we're in that feels so comfortable is anti-God.
Right. Big time.
And if we don't acknowledge that, if we don't look at the anti-godness of the world system that we are in, doesn't mean that every person that we know is some terrible God hater. We know other believers, right? But everyone who's not a believer is by their nature a God hater, whether they wear it on a t-shirt or not. And so, we avoid those people that look scary, that look like that.
Right.
But the worst and scariest are those that fit in with us, that feel right, that we can be comfortable around. If we're comfortable with the world, then we're becoming more like them than like God.
Okay, we will stop there for today.
Not as long as last time.
No, that's true, but still long. But we ranted a lot and talked a lot about Superman. So thank you guys for listening, and we will catch you next time.
Up and away.
My beautiful balloon. Thanks, you too.
Which has nothing to do with Superman.